I'd like to call to order the Town of Londonderry Zoning Board of Adjustment. To begin the meeting, I'd like to have everyone introduce themselves.
My name is Nick Gardner, I'm the building inspector, the zoning administrator.
My name's Laura Gandia, I'm the associate planner.
My name's Irene Macarelli, I'm an alternate member.
David Armstrong, I'm an alternate member.
Brendan O'Brien, voting member.
Jackie Bernard, voting member.
Suzanne Brunel, voting member.
Mitch Feig, voting member.
Chris Moore, alternate member.
Before we begin the cases, I'd like to read into the record for the meeting procedures this evening. The clerk will read the case into the record. The applicant will make their presentation. The board will address the applicant with any questions or comments. Those who are in favor of the request are given the opportunity to address the board. We ask that you come to the mic, state your name and address for the record. Those opposed or having questions regarding the request are given the opportunity to also address the board. We ask that they also give their name and address for the record. The applicant is then given the opportunity to rebut any opposition, and the opposition is given the opportunity for any rebuttal. The board addresses the applicant with any additional comments or questions, at which time, if there are none, the public hearing portion regarding the case will be closed, and the board will enter into deliberation and vote on the request or continue the case to a future date. Those that wish to speak must approach the board and use one microphone provided. Anyone speaking must state their name and address for the record. All conversations will be directed through the board to ensure a single line of communication. We ask that you please turn off your cell phones or turn them to vibrate during this meeting. First order of business this evening, the minutes to approve for the May 18th, 2022 meeting. I'd like to have a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the May 18th, 2022 meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I'm abstaining.
I'm abstaining as well.
Okay, so noted. The minutes are now approved. Do we have any report by the town council liaison for discussion this evening?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have anything to say, but I would like some input from you guys. Yay, the chicken ordinance passed. So now, that's a good thing. But is there anything else that you guys would like to see us look at that might ease us having to put waivers and things out there?
Talk about the storage.
The signage ordinance.
I can't hear you.
The signage ordinance is
The
terrible.
signage ordinance?
Yes. We have very large warehouses that are allowed very small signage. And it's a frequent,
I
petition
did
here.
bring that up, just so you know, to the planning department, planning board, but right now, because we don't have a town planner, and they tried to put it out there to find someone who we could hire to help us relook at those ordinances. I guess they're pretty complex. They were having a hard time finding somebody reasonable or affordable that would do a good job to do that at this moment, but they are well aware of the sign ordinance. But other than the sign ordinance,
Well, and I don't know if you feel differently, the biggest problem is just the size of sign per
right.
place. But I get that that's a challenge at the moment.
right, I mean, and right at this moment in time, but if there's something else that you feel like you're seeing a lot of cases of that you would like them to look at, now's the time to ask.
David?
What about the storage containers?
Storage containers?
Storage containers. Did we not, excuse me, may I talk to?
Yeah, yes.
So didn't we just address or update the container things that allowed?
Changed it probably within the last couple of years. So we had an overhaul for the portable storage that required it by special exception, and these folks have had quite a few of requests to have storage containers in the AR1 district, so that's been there with guidance for them. Recently, we made a change to the zoning to say that the applicant has to tell you how long they want that storage container to be
Right.
on the property. So that was a change that was suggested by Nick.
And so I guess I need more direction from the zoning board as to what you're looking for in that ordinance, since it had been just updated, or are you looking for more commercial? Is there an ordinance that says that commercial or is it the same? Residential and commercial the
No,
same?
There's two different processes for AR1
Okay.
and for commercial. The zoning board sees the AR1 in here for a
Okay.
special exception.
Okay,
So when we sit up here and we try to define how long we're going to give somebody for their time to utilize their storage unit, to police that, to even be fair and try to, the guidelines for resident A versus resident B versus 6 months versus indefinite, I mean, it's really loose for us up here.
and I guess it was created that way. My understanding when I heard it at the town council and at planning was that it was to allow you, to hear the story. I mean, and it is a story, you don't know how much of it is true, not true, but to hear what they're presenting to you and be within a reason. And I think lots of times you can defer to both Nick and Laura on that situation, is this, what we've done in the past? Have we done this? I think but not adding time leaves it as indefinite. Adding time, at least, they can come back and say, our 6 months are up and, we haven't had supplies, we couldn't get the materials we needed to do what we need to do, so we need the trailer for another 6 months. They can continually extend it within reason. I mean, but if you're doing a construction project and you get one of these things and it shouldn't be there indefinitely.
We have not had one construction project.
I'm sorry?
We have not had one construction project.
They're mostly residential.
They're residential and they're people with a lot of stuff.
That just want to stay there.
Right. So there's no
With- even in the AR, if you have a building permit, you're allowed to have a storage container there until 14 days after completion. So they don't need a special exception to have one in the AR if they have a building permit.
But like what they're saying, Nick, is that somebody wants them just really as their own private storage facility on
Yes.
their property.
Yep.
So how do we limit the time on that? Like, without getting in trouble? I mean, maybe you have to dig a little bit and find out. I mean, we don't want to get in trouble by saying, oh, you did this and now,
Well, I think we would have to rewrite, or make an amendment to the ordinance.
okay.
I'm not opposed to that.
Okay, so that's something that we can look at as well.
We had more structure in the previous, because it was very defined. And to your point, they could come back and they could say, we have this set of circumstances, could we extend it one more time? So we had a better handle on the storage container issues.
There's really no baseline. You know what I mean? Like, okay.
It's a free-for-all, basically.
Okay, so I guess can we get that brought up at planning and then maybe invite the chair or the vice chair of zoning to address the planning board to explain, your version of it, what you see, so that we can write it correctly to make your
Or
life
just
a
help,
little-
help us so that the board can have a better understanding of the definition of what it is, that
Right.
that we can fairly administer those rules equally every time it comes up. But
Right.
right now, it's,
To understand what the purpose of the ordinance was, because it is very broad.
No, I get what you're saying. I can only bring it to people's attention and hopefully mediate it so that we can actually move it forward in a more positive direction for you all. So that's the only one?
that's the only thing I had.
Okay.
Don't
And-
forget the signs, though.
You can ask them how many times I bring it up. I just can't, they don't have, enough staff and time to get that done at this moment, so. I mean, unless and I can bring this up as planning again and say, can we take it in very small bites?
That's been discussed, it's just because there's so much legality, with the content and size of signs, there's a lot of case law on signs. That's why we put it out for an RFP, to get somebody that could really come in and do all of that additional research, look at the case law. And I believe we got, I don't know how many bids, but they were astronomical, not within any type of budget that we could afford. So unfortunately, that's been put on hold until we can have somebody come in
Right.
and.
I
do
mean,
that.
we could look at bits and pieces that don't necessarily have all that case law that we could tweak, but the big piece that I know you guys are looking for is the one that
Number, size.
we really have to,
There's usually calculations for that. The numbers come from somebody who's done analysis on building sizes and height. So it's just not like, oh, we think it should be this. There's really a science behind it. And that's why we were looking for somebody to come in and give guidance with that.
yeah. So I, just so you know, we did our best. Unfortunately,
Great,
it's on hold.
thank you. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.
Next order of business would be regional impact determinations, Laura?
I have two for your consideration. First one is request for a variance from LZO 4.2.1.3.C.2 to encroach 5 feet into the 15-foot side setback for the construction of a shed, 16 Partridge Lane, map 16, lot 3211, zoned AR1, David and Faith Buckley, owner and applicant. Case number 615-2022-2, request for a variance from LZO 5.15.2.C to allow a portable storage structure to remain on the property indefinitely where only 6 months are allowed. 497 Mammoth Road, map 15, lot 132, zone C1, Cynthia Bacchios, owner and applicant. Staff recommends that the board find these two projects are not of regional impact as they do not meet the criteria set forth by the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission.
Do I have a motion to accept the regional impact determinations? Oh, that's right. Who, for the alternates, has not been appointed yet to sit? Did you, last time, Irene? Did I appoint you?
Not last
I think you
time.
appointed me.
Okay, so Irene, this time you'll be appointed, so that we have a full 5-member board. Okay. We don't have to vote her in, do we? Okay. So Irene, you'll be a full member this evening. Do I have a motion for the regional impact determination?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the regional impact determination.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And we are ready.
Case number 615-2022-1, a request for a variance from LZO 4.2.1.3.C.2 to encroach 5 feet into the 15-foot side setback for the construction of a shed, 16 Partridge Lane, map 16, lot 32-11, zoned AR1, David and Faith Buckley, owner and applicant. Previous zoning on the property is a variance to install an in-ground pool in 1989, which was going to be located less than 15 feet from the side lot line, which was denied.
Yeah, right here. And please state your name and address for the record.
My name's David Buckley, 16 Partridge Lane, Londonderry, New Hampshire, 03053.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So do you know what to do this evening?
I do not.
So you filled out an application, do you have that with you?
do.
Okay, perfect. So, in order for us to hear your case, you just have to state those 5 points of law that you filled out and the
Right.
reasons for coming before us this evening.
Great. So as said, I'm looking to replace a new shed, replacing an existing structure that was in the, that has been in that spot since at least I purchased the property in 2013. Question one, the variance not contrary to public interest. The structure is for my use only, private use, replacing an existing structure that was already in that spot, and that will not change the essential character of the neighborhood. Everything should remain the same there. The spirit of the ordinance, the placement of the new shed is in the existing location. In the existing location have no change on the impact of the character of the neighborhood or harm the general welfare of the public, as the shed has been there for at least a decade. Regarding substantial justice, the existing structure is full of little critters that have caused damage to the items stored, meaning that I've had to store other large expensive items like lawnmowers, snow blowers elsewhere, specifically my garage, losing use of that space. Not replacing the shed will make me have to continue to store that information elsewhere or I'll suffer loss. I have actually had to replace equipment that's been destroyed. The value of the surrounding property will not be diminished. No, the new structure and the cleanup that will be happening in around that area to install it will actually be an improvement, in my opinion. The structure will be in the same place that has been, that it has been for 10 years in relation to the neighbor's property. And that neighbor has voiced support. He's not here, but he did verbally tell me that. Literal enforcement of the provision. Placing the new shed in the front would change the character of the neighborhood, obviously. In the back, further back, is down an engineered slope that is about a 5-foot difference in an area that regularly floods and where the ground is very soft. Further away from the property line, to meet the 15-foot setback would actually encroach on my septic tank and leach field. And the other side of my property, we did actually figure out how to get a pool in there last year, and so that area is no longer available. The proposed use as a reasonable one, I intend to use the new shed as a place to safely store lawn equipment and pool equipment when it is not in use.
Thank you. Does the board, any board members have any questions for the applicant?
So basically, you're just replacing the shed that's there with this new one?
Exactly.
Is it gonna be the same size shed?
I'm switching from a 10 by 16 shed to a 12 by 20.
And what about the height?
About the same height. Yeah, the plans have all been submitted to the building inspector's office.
So
Any-
the, sorry,
Go ahead, Mitch.
so the 10 by 16, so is the 12 by 20 now 2 feet more on your property than the 10 was?
So the 10 by 16 shed is 10 feet from the property line today.
Right.
There was actually a landscaped area where a couple of garden beds had been put in front of that one that come out about 2.5 feet, so I'm just getting rid of those. There'll be no ramp on the front of the shed on the new one, so I won't need to have that space set aside. We can just step right.
But the 2 feet are onto your property?
Yes, onto my
Close to the
property, yes.
line.
Any other questions?
If I may. So I'm not clear, why can't you move that forward more?
So before, moving it forward would essentially put it right over the septic tank in the leach field.
Okay. Do you have a plan on that?
The last page I did include a plot map. Yeah, on the very last picture included. The backyard is an engineered slope that I believe was built up to accommodate the septic in the leach field. You can actually see the slope lines on the map in the leach field. Moving that out further would, in my opinion, make that a little too close. So that black represents where the existing shed sits today. Yes, sir.
Is the old shed still on the property, or have you already moved?
I removed it.
So you're not encroaching any more than it already is?
No,
or
sir.
already was?
No, sir. And it's my understanding that when that shed was put in, there was no rule regarding how close it had to be to the property line based on its square footage.
Oh, it's been a long time ago.
It was at least 10 years. It was there when I bought the house.
More than that.
Do you have any other questions from any board members? Okay. I'm going to take it out to the audience. Is there anyone in favor for the applicant? Let the record show that there is no one. Is there anyone opposed? And let the record show that there is nobody. I'll bring it back to the board one more time if we have any other questions of the applicant. Okay. At this time, we'll close it, and we'll just go into deliberations. Does anybody need any clarification, or do you just want to go into the 5 points alone?
5 points.
I'm good.
I'm good. Okay, let's do it.
Granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest because
I would say it will not be contrary to the public interest. Doesn't alter the character of the neighborhood.
I agree.
I agree. Spirit of the ordinance would or would not be observed because I would say would.
Would.
I agree.
Agree. For the same reasons, it would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood.
And you got the help. Safety and welfare on
Yeah.
the, number 2.
Yep, no, yep.
Granting the variance would or would not do substantial justice because?
It would.
Would,
I agree.
There's already a shed there anyway.
No loss to the public by
Right.
placing the shed.
correct, I agree.
For the following reasons, the values of the surrounding properties would or would not be diminished.
I would say would not. Oh,
I agree.
Agree.
I agree.
Replacing the shed with a newer one doesn't affect property values.
It's not negatively as far as I know.
Right. Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because A, there is or is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because
It's not.
I agree.
Agree.
Because of the lot slope and the location of the leach field and whatnot,
I agree.
What not?
and whatnot.
That's the first time use on that one.
Yeah, and whatnot.
It's a very legal term.
That is well defined. The proposed use is or is not a reasonable one because
Is, sheds are reasonable?
sheds are reasonable. Any comments, restrictions?
Yes. The applicant does not state the exact size, but we're gonna, if everyone's okay with declaring that it shall not be greater than 12 by 20 for the shed size,
Shouldn't encroach any more than the existing.
and shall not encroach more than 10 feet.
5 feet. Is it encroaching 5 feet or 10?
I'm looking to encroach 5 feet in, so the shed will be 10 feet from the property line.
Oh, okay, 5 feet, excuse me.
You guys want to give me
Thank
5
you.
feet from the property line? I'll take it.
Ooh.
Careful.
Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion in case number 615, 2022-1, to grant the request for a variance from LZO 4.2.1.3.c.2 to encroach 5 feet into the 15-foot side setback for the construction of a shed, 16 Partridge Lane, map 16, lot 32-1, zoned AR1, with the conditions that the shed shall encroach only 5 feet into the side setback, and the shed will be no larger than 12 feet by 20 feet.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Are we pausing for dramatic effect or?
Does have a post-traumatic effect. She's gonna check.
I can read your writing.
No, it's good.
Nice.
In case number 615, 2022-1, the request for variance was granted with the conditions that the shed not to encroach, the shed to encroach only 5 feet into the side setback, and the shed shall not be larger than 12 feet by 20 feet.
Have a good evening.
Great, thank you very much.
Case number 615-2022-2, a request for a variance from LZO 5.15.2.c to allow a portable storage structure to remain on the property indefinitely where only 6 months are allowed. 497 Mammoth Road, map 15, lot 132, zone C1. Cynthia Bacchios, owner and applicant.
Welcome. Please state your name for the record and your address.
I'm Cynthia Bakis, and I'm at 497 Mammoth Road, Londonderry, New Hampshire, 03053.
And do you know what to do this evening?
Just read the answers I put on the paper.
Yes, please.
That's what I was told.
That's perfect.
Just to say, before we begin, because this is a little bit of a unique one, if you
Okay.
wouldn't mind, I would just kind of interject and set the playing field for everybody. So this is a C1 zone property that received a variance to have it to be used as a residential property, but the underlying zoning is C1, so you have a variance to allow it to be used as an agricultural residential, to be used as a home. So that makes it a little bit tricky when she wants a portable storage, because she doesn't fall under the typical criteria that you go through for an AR1. She now falls under portable storage structures in commercial districts because she's a commercial district. So and the only thing that she's seeking relief from is the amount of time that she can have it. Because in a commercial district, you're only allowed to have it for 6 consecutive months. So she's seeking a variance from that criteria to allow her to have it. And I think she wants it indefinitely. So you're not going to have a special exception criteria form. You're going to actually have a variance application in front of you because it's a commercial district that has different rules than what you would see for a residential district for the AR1, which would be a special exception.
Is there any restriction on a residential property on how long they can have a temporary storage?
That's what we were just talking about. No,
No.
There is not one at all.
there's not.
I wasn't sure if it was like 9 months or.
No, that's what, kind of flavor the board, by fact finding, like, why do you want that structure? For how long, what are you using it for? And the board can, attach a condition if they wanted to limit it, or if they don't have to attach a condition, and that person can have it there indefinitely.
Great,
So
thank you.
that's at the purview of the board.
Thank you, Laura. You may begin.
Do you want to read the rest of these? Sorry. All right. The variance will not be contrary to the public interest. The storage container is going to be used for personal use. I have an antique vehicle that I have been keeping in the storage container for 14 years now. And I'm actually having it moved to the property. Since I've been renting the property for 10 years, I now own it, so I need to have the storage container moved over. I have no basement, I have no garage, so I don't have any storage. So I'm just looking for a place to put a little bit of stuff in storage, the lawnmower and stuff, and then to put the car in the wintertime. I keep it in there. It'll be located behind the house. It won't impact any of the neighbors. I'm surrounded by swamp, and I have an elderly complex on the other side of me, but there's a tree line and some swamp in between us. The spirit of the ordinance is observed. Storage container is not blocking any view, nor will it be visible from any abutters. It will not be used for any commercial activities. Substantial justice is done. Storage and garage is necessary and cannot at this time build on the property, so temporary is required. The values of surrounding properties are not diminished. The values of surrounding properties will not be diminished since neighbors are not able to see the unit, nor will it impact them in any way. No fair and substantial relationship exists between the general public purposes of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property. And because there's no basement or other place for the storage at this time and no garage, and because I'm surrounded by wetlands, there's no other place to put it. I have to put it in the middle of the backyard, and I can't put it to the side because I have to have setbacks from the front and the swamp on the side. In the criteria that in subparagraph A, are not established, an unnecessary hardship will be deemed to exist if and only if owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot be reasonably used in strict conformance with the ordinance, and a variance is therefore necessary to establish a reasonable use of it. There's no other way to utilize the property at this time, and the proposal takes into account and meets all the property boundary setbacks and also stays back away from any edges of the wetlands.
Does anybody have any questions of the applicant?
So are you saying you can't build a garage on the land, or you just?
I
not
don't know, it's something that I had talked with Nick about. Because of the wetlands, I have to get it surveyed, and there's also a problem with doing footings and foundation with being on a wetland, with it being so wet that I have to dig down 4 feet to put in a foundation. I would like to attempt to try to do that at some point and see if that's possible, but I do have to get some specialists in to look at that.
So there is a possibility at some point that you.
At some
could
point,
build-
yes. My goal is to eventually try to put a garage on there, and in discussions with Nick, we talked about possibly putting it to the side of the house. I don't meet the setback from the road, but he said I could try to get a variance on that if I was to go that route, as opposed to, we're not sure if I can do it in the backyard yet because of the wetlands. So there's a lot of things that we have to look at to be able to do that first, so.
Do you have an idea on like the time frame? Like,
I'm hoping it's something that I can do within the next couple of years. Right now, I've got siding and windows, the insurance company's screaming. I just purchased the house, and I've been renting it for 10 and a half years. And the insurance company is saying that they need the siding and the windows done, or they want to cancel my insurance. So I have a $40,000 bill coming up in August to do siding and windows this year, so I can't do a garage, or I can't even get any of that surveying and stuff done right
I
now.
was just trying to get at, like, you know,
Yeah, eventually, I would like to have a garage on the property.
Now, keep in mind that this variance is indefinitely, so it's going to stay with the property regardless if the garage has
that's why
gone
I
up or
was
not.
saying.
This is what the variance is for, an indefinite period of time.
A question.
Yes.
If somebody bought that property, could they use it as purely commercial, even though it's been allowed to be a residential and a commercial?
Yes, because it's allowed to be residential by use of a variance, so if they were to use it at commercial, the variance now, if it's abandoned for a certain amount of time, then it would, yeah, they absolutely can use it for commercial, but there's really no commercial use on it. I mean, you could maybe put a little shop in there, but if you look at, in the back, they do have, all of this is all the wetlands in the
Yeah.
back. So, but yes, it absolutely could be used commercially,
If we,
provided it had a
It used
site
to be a
plan
flower
review.
shop.
Yeah, and the prior owner told me that the reason he rented it out and put it back to residential was because they were having a hard time getting businesses that could actually use the property because it's right at the intersection, so there's not enough space for parking, and the traffic coming in and out was just too much. So he said that they had problems with businesses being able to come in and take over the property. So he put it to residential, and we converted it to residential when I moved in.
but if that happened, we grant it's highly unlikely, if we granted a variance here, would that variance go away, or would we put a restriction if it ever became a commercial property?
If it became a commercial property, they would have to go through site plan review, so it would be at the planning board, and the planning board would look at everything, and that variance would not apply because it's for the residential
I
use.
got it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? What year is this home?
I think it's 1958, I think.
And then where exactly would that container be located?
Right behind the house in the middle of the backyard. If you look at it, you can see it in the middle there. I have to stay away from the swamp. You can see the swamp line and the tree line around the outside edge. So I put it in behind the house so that it's well away from any of the swamp area. And it is located behind the house, so it's not visible. And I've got swamp all the way around. You can't see the complex on the other side. And then to my right, to the right side is the elderly complex. And we have trees and everything between us. And all of their units are located on the other side of that main building.
And the size of it is?
They're 8 by 20, or 10 by 20.
Okay. And this is gonna be a true storage container, it's not gonna be a trailer on wheels, it'll be on the ground?
It'll be on ground, yes, yep. I actually have it, I've had it for 14 years now, I've been renting it from Fortin.
It does say 10 by 20, by the way, on the proposed layout.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other questions? All right, I'll take it out to the audience. If there's anyone in favor of the applicant, let the record show that there was no one left. And if there's anyone opposed, they're not here. So I'll bring it back to the board. Do you have any other inquiries?
So could there be a time restriction put on that, or it has to be for indefinite?
I think there could be a time restriction, if we wanted,
You could put a
I'm
time.
gonna have a real hard time with indefinite.
even though if it was residential in an AR, it would be indefinite, right?
The board has within its purview to put a condition on it for
Okay.
time.
I think indefinite.
Would it be possible to say as long as the plot is used for residential use, that the,
I mean, that's a given too. I mean, that's indefinitely, because that could be used like that for the next 100 years. And you absolutely could, but just like, to backtrack, if it went to commercial, they would be subject to a site plan review through the planning board.
right, anyways, okay.
Okay, so I guess maybe one last question. This storage unit, you stated is primarily for some type of an antique vehicle?
Yes, I have an 87 Trans Am that I've been stored in it for 14 years. I put it in there at Thanksgiving, and it sits there all winter long, pull the battery, and it comes out in April. And I put this, a couple of feet in the front that I store some extra stuff in the front, and that's it. So,
All right, well, I have no other questions. We're all set? All right, we're going to close the public portion of the hearing, and do we need to deliberate? Do we have to hash out any conditions or concerns anybody has before we do the 5 points of law?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I mean, at a minimum, we need a time
Yeah, I don't like the
frame.
word indefinite.
Indefinite is not working for me, and leaving it to change in status doesn't work either, because it could be residential
Well,
indefinitely.
it sounds like it's around
I'm
14
uncomfortable
years old.
anything residential indefinitely. A storage unit was never intended to be a permanent structure on a property. So
Yeah, I
I
agree.
think that does a lot of things if we're gonna go down that road.
But also, if the structure is now 14 years old, it reaches a point where it starts to degrade, it's near
Deteriorate, whatever.
water, I guess. I don't know what happens then if, 20 years from now, it starts to fall apart.
well, I mean, just even the case, the way that it's stated to us, portable in itself describes that it is not to be there. It is a temporary time period, so I guess we're gonna have to hash out what is reasonable for an amount of time.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe we could ask,
Again, indefinitely is just so
yeah, it's too far.
forever,
It's too perpetual.
forever. I mean, we don't know what the future is, we don't know if it's gonna go back to commercial, we don't know any of that. All we know is right now it is residential,
And it's a portable unit.
and it's a portable unit. So we have to find something that's reasonable within all of this. If anybody else has some suggestions as to how we arrive at that.
Well, do we want to then see if we get through the 5 points, and if we do, then we can rehash the amount of time, or?
I know
Brandon, did you have any suggestions?
I just think it's the amount of time, because I agree indifferent's too long. I mean, I think, we need, if 6 months is what you could have without a variance, that's right, 6 months?
Yes.
Okay, so it's sometime between 6 months and indefinite. So I don't know if that's, I mean, I would think it would be somewhere between 3 and 5 years.
I think that's a long time, I was thinking 2, but
I'm thinking two,
think it's
at least 2, yeah, because she's got work to do. right?
Yes, Nick?
You may want to put put a stipulation in there that if the garage is built, the container goes away. Because if
Yes.
it were indefinite, and the garage could get built, then that container would stay if you gave them a variance.
What, are those all wetlands around it?
Yeah.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
And how far from what, is it 30 feet from wetlands to Bill's? Right, 30 feet?
It's normally 50 feet.
50
50
feet.
feet, they can't build anything without a variance.
Correct.
Just to be clear though, if this was AR, she wouldn't have to be here at all.
She would.
Yeah, she
would.
She would, but it's under a special exception, which is a different set of criteria that she would have to go through.
If this was zoned to AR.
Yep, so no matter what, if you want a portable storage structure, you need to come in front of the board for an AR1 resident. Yeah.
At all. Got it.
2 years is, I mean, I have no problem with 2 years, if that's what people want.
Which would mean she'd have to come back in 2 years
If
if.
she wanted it longer.
Yeah, exactly, and then you can
Yeah,
reassess,
that sounds reasonable.
yeah, and then you can reassess how, you know, what the situation is,
In 2 years.
what's changed.
We'll give her some time to get whatever she needs done, try to figure things out.
Or come back for a
Yeah,
variance on the garage.
Right.
Well, I don't know
Right.
if we can do it yet. That's the whole thing. I
Right.
don't know if I'm gonna be able to build it, but I need something for storage. I have no basement, I have no attic, I have no place to put anything, so.
Yeah, I think that would be a reasonable amount of time for her to try to figure it out, I guess. You guys think?
Would anybody, so 2 years, year 1, year 2, would anybody be opposed to 3? Only because I'm thinking how fast time
Years go by.
flies.
And right now, the economy's
That's my
pretty rough.
concern. It's a lot
And
of work
if
to
we can
go through everything.
give, whereas indefinite, where the applicant wants indefinite, maybe that extra year and everything that's going on, maybe that's that little bit of ease. I don't know, does anybody have a problem with that extra year for 3?
I'd be fine with 2 or 3.
I can relate to what she's doing because.
It needs to be addressed, and I think the longer you put it off, the make a decision.
All right. Okay. All right, well, are we ready to go on the 5 points of law, and then we can hash it out at the end if you want
Yeah.
for the time? Okay, let's do it.
Granting the variance would or would not be contrary to the public interest because? I agree.
Because it would be kind of out of.
Agree?
Doesn't change the essential character of the neighborhood.
It does not,
Assuming it is placed where we're talking about it being placed.
as per the testimony of the applicant, yes.
Petition. I just want to be clear for anyone who might be listening.
Spirit of the ordinance would or would not be observed because?
Would be.
Agreed. For the same reasons as number 1.
Yes.
Well, again, it's health, safety, or welfare on that one.
There is no health, safety, or welfare concerns.
To Mitch's point, if it's left there indefinitely and it's 14 years old, it has a life expectancy.
They trade them out. I just got mine replaced.
So unfortunately, we're in deliberations, so there's no more testimony that's allowed, I'm sorry. With how old it is, I guess we could,
That's another reason I was looking at 2 years. That was factoring into my
okay,
thought process.
okay.
Granting the variance would or would not do substantial justice because?
I think it would.
I would too.
Agree.
There's no loss to the public if the variance is granted.
I agree.
For the following reasons, the values of the surrounding properties would or would not be diminished.
Would not.
I agree.
Doesn't
There's
change
no,
the-
there's no surrounding properties.
There's no surrounding
Yeah,
properties is
I
right.
mean, Owing to special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, denial of the variance would result in unnecessary hardship because there is or is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance provision and the specific application of that provision to the property because
It's a unique piece.
It's enough,
Uh,
Scott.
based on its zoning, the wetlands.
It has such,
Zoning, wetlands, location, yeah,
it has a lot of
drawbacks.
drawbacks that have to be overcome, yes.
The proposed use is or is not a reasonable one because
Well, storage is reasonable.
and comments, restrictions, timeframe restrictions.
So it sounds like if we want to say if garage is built, then,
Well, first, how long?
yeah, I guess that's.
Well,
How
no, I
long?
think he's right. If the garage could be built in a shorter period of time, then we're talking 2 or 3 years.
Plus, you would probably have to come to the zoning board for the garage anyway.
Right. So if we list the time period, which would then be lifted should the garage
Be built.
be constructed.
Until the garage is built or 2 years passes, whichever happens first.
Yeah.
Did you want to put in the location that she should have on as well?
Do we need to do that?
She has to submit it,
I
right?
always wonder about that, because it's in the
So
proposal.
it's until the garage is
Until the
built,
garage is built
or
or 2 years pass,
2 years
whichever happens first.
pass. Whichever. And unit not to be any larger than 10 by 20?
I'm just going to question the board. She's allowed by a matter of right to have it 10 by 40 by 10.
Oh,
Oh,
okay,
because it's
never mind.
commercial, so.
Thank you.
No, I can get a bigger one. They didn't stipulate that. Can we change that? Instead of having that?
Get 2 cars in there.
Okay, do we have any other comments or conditions we need? I'm
Not for
good.
me.
I'm good.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion in case number 615, 2022-2, to grant the request for a variance from LZO 5.15.2.c to allow portable storage structure to remain on the property for only 6 months are allowed, with the condition that the portable storage structure remain until a garage is built or 2 years pass, whichever happens first.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
In case number 615-22-2, the request for a variance was granted with the restriction that the portable structure remain only until a garage is built or 2 years pass, whichever happens first.
Thank you,
Thank
you're all
you.
set. And next order of business, do we have any other communications, Laura, or other miscellaneous items?
We did have a rehearing request in case number 1117-2021-3 and 4. Request for a variance from LZO 4.2.2.3.B.1.B to allow 45 residential 3-bedroom units where only 20.66 are permitted. 22 Young Road, map 6, lot 58-2, zoned R3. Edgar L. Pitts and Winifred Pitts, revocable trust owner, and 20 Young Road, map 6, lot 53, zoned R3, Tony and Heidi Bennett, owner, and Cedar Crest Development LLC applicant. I received a letter today from Attorney Cronin withdrawing the request for a rehearing.
Thank you.
And I think we skipped over the first one, the case number 121521-8. Did we do that one?
No.
I thought it was
Okay,
withdrawn.
so that was a request from a variance from LZO 4.2.1.3.B.1 to allow a lot with 100.58 feet of frontage where 150 feet are required. 8 Wiley Hill Road, map 5, lot 28, zoned AR1, Belize Estate Holding LLC, owner and applicant. That case was continued from the May 18th, 2022 meeting. I also received a request to withdraw that application without prejudice, as they are still working with staff and they're exploring other options, so they may come back in front of us, but they just wanted to kind of regroup because it's been quite the passage of time since December. So
Thank
they've
you.
withdrawn it.
And final order of business is election of officers and training dates.
And I have to say, I saw Neil Dunn the other day, so it was wonderful to see him. So he says he does watch our meetings occasionally, and he wanted me to pass along well wishes to everybody. He said that Jackie does a wonderful job running the meeting. So would
Boy,
anybody like to be chair?
Jackie?
Do I need to nominate?
go ahead. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Jackie as chair.
Second.
Who seconded that? Chris?
Can Chris second?
No, he can't.
Oh.
Undo it.
Yeah.
I want to make it airtight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want to take a risk.
I'll second.
Well, Mitch just seconded, right? Did Mitch
Yeah,
second?
Mitch did.
Yeah,
You can
Mitch seconded.
You can second.
Okay.
Someone's also nice.
Unanimous.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay.
And we need a vice chair.
And I'd like to nominate Suzanne as vice chair.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
You have it.
Thank you.
Boy, you have a big smile this
I'm
evening.
so excited.
Do I have a motion? Because I believe business is now
Oh, just
done.
one, nope, I have one other thing.
Wait a minute, one other.
The training dates.
Yeah.
Remember we had training, the attendance didn't work out so well. I'm thinking of not trying to schedule it during the summer.
Okay.
So I'm gonna readdress that in the fall time.
Oh, perfect. That would be great. Okay. All right, agreed. Do I have a motion to end this meeting?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned.